Parents who have disowned or stopped loving their child. Why is that the case? As Jehovah's Witnesses, my parents disowned my siblings and I several times since I was in my late teens. One of the Jehovah's rules is that you do not associate with others who know the truth but refuse to follow it, including family, and parents are encouraged to disown any children who have left the religion. The first time was when I was 19. It upset me, I was heartbroken, and eventually they changed their minds only to do it again a couple years later, and so on until I stopped caring and no longer attempt to be a part of their lives at all. Was seeing a girl in high school. Her family was Jehovah's, but she really didn't care. I really liked her and it was fun. Then she disappeared. Her dad found out and she was sent to live with her grandmother. Never saw her again. Her sister managed to let me know what happened and that the girl was sorry. Really bummed me out for a couple years. I signed away my parental rights to my daughter. It sounds terrible, but here is the backstory. My ex-wife and I separated for a while. Then we briefly reconciled. We had hooked up exactly once. We were working things out and then she says there's been another man in the picture and the kid isn't mine. She wants a quick, clean divorce. I refuse to proceed with the divorce until paternity is sorted out. DNA test is finally done and what do you know? It's mine. I deploy to Afghanistan. When I get back, finally get a hearing for the divorce. It took a judge's order to finally allow me to see my daughter. She was already walking when I saw her for the first time. Fast forward 1.5 years and I am flat broke, traveling 600 miles on weekends to see my daughter for just a few hours, if at all. The ex was pulling no shows and showing up late for my scheduled visits. When my daughter called me other daddy, I knew I didn't have a chance. I knew that my ex was going to badmouth me and undermine me every chance she got. I signed away my rights shortly thereafter. She is 16 years old now. Once she is 18, I'll be able to contact her. I wouldn't say I've disowned or stopped loving my son, but it's real tough to find love for him. He's almost 14, next month, and he's currently out of our home at a treatment facility. He's averaged 2 arrests a year for the last 2 years, and he's attacked my wife several times, our daughters several times, and the neighborhood kids several times. He's run away from school, run away from home, and tried to push me off the roof of our house, after threatening to jump off and hurt himself. We have become that family in our town where the police are called to our home on a semi-regular basis. He's been getting more violent as he gets older, not to mention bigger and stronger, and I honestly don't see an end in sight. The key fact I'm leaving out is that he's been diagnosed as high-functioning autistic and is also bipolar. That's like putting walls around a tornado and expecting it to stay inside the walls. A lot of what has occurred he had little control over because of the way his mind is, where he's constantly at war with himself, structure versus chaos, and my wife and I have tried desperately to give him the best life we can while keeping ourselves and our daughters safe, but I'm tired. It's been 8.5 years we've been going through this with him and I've been ready to throw in the towel on him for a while. But my wife refuses to let him go, so we wake up every morning trying to give him the best life for him and our girls. My brother has the same combo and was in a similar situation at that age. He's 10 years older now and studying for a PhD and engaged to a wonderful woman. I'm not promising that it will get better, but it can. I've seen it happen. Feel free to message me if you want to talk more. Thanks, I might take you up on that offer. We've got hope that he'll normalize, so to speak, after he gets through puberty, and we've heard of numerous success stories when individuals got older. It is, they say, sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees. I'm really hoping he can have a happy adulthood. My mother was disowned by her parents for her interracial relationship. Edit, there's been some discussion below, so I'm going to put it up here along with a little more detail. Yes, we are from the South, Arkansas. There are parts of this that are weird too. My mother initially lied to her parents and said she was dating an Arab man. This was fine, but they found out she was lying, leading to her being disowned. I guess in the early 70s Arabs were okay but blacks were no-nos. They disowned my mom, but it was fine if we came over. My older sister was close with them, but me and my younger sister always felt weird going over there. They adored my older sister though, and she stayed over and went on vacation with them among other things. I remember asking my grandfather why he didn't like my mother when I was about 8 or 9 years old at a cousin's birthday party. He just walked away. These same people who essentially pushed her out of their lives were the same ones she took care of and comforted in their darkest times. She sort of went back to them, and they didn't push her away for what I am assuming is they knew the end was near and they were trying to right their wrongs. I have no idea, just an assumption. She was there with them until their ends though. My mom might not be perfect, but damn, that made me look at her in a completely different light. I can answer for my mother. I cut contact from her, but from what I hear nowadays she hates me for ruining her life. First awful thing I did, my mother purchased her first home when I was 12. She had always had this vision of me having a house and playing in the backyard as a child, and I think she felt like I was missing out by living in apartments all my life. Thing was, I had no desire to move out of where we were, and probably more importantly, she couldn't really afford a house, plus this was just around the housing crisis as well, so the price was super inflated and dropped significantly a year later. We only lived there a year before moving in with her at the time boyfriend and renting it out. I apparently was the sole reason that she purchased that house. She did that for me. So it was my fault that she bought a house she couldn't afford. Second awful thing I did, she got pulled over while driving to a nearby city because she was swerving on the freeway. I was 13 at the time and had fallen asleep, but got woken up by the car shaking back and forth and almost hitting a semi, while she was asleep at the wheel. I woke her up and she insisted on pushing through, and not too long after she was pulled over by an undercover cop. I watched as she was failing the sobriety test hard. She fell a couple of times trying to walk in a straight line. I cooperated with police and gave over the prescriptions she had in the car with her. So basically that was an act of betrayal. She was in the medical field and was struggling to find/keep a job that would hire her with a record, charged with child endangerment. So she was driving while heavily medicated, but I took most of the blame because I wasn't loyal to her and sold her out to the police. So now her finances are in shambles and can't keep a job in her field because of the awful things I did as a teenager. Her career is ruined because of me. A lot more happened to damage our relationship, but I think she would identify these two things as the main reasons having me as a child ruined her life. Since it seems to have widened a bit, a family torn apart. Based on an aunt and her niece. Aunt starts signs of dementia at a relatively young age, is moved into an assisted living home. Niece, who bounces around jobs, gets hired to go visit her about once a week, take her out to the mall or a walk in the park, whatever. Paid handsomely. We get an alert that aunt has a check bounce from her account that should have $5,000 in it. Niece has drained the account. Proven beyond a doubt, with receipts. Niece would take aunt to aunt's bank machine every Friday and withdraw $200, then fill her car with gas. Aunt can't drive, and charge us hours when she clearly didn't spend hours with aunt. Charged us claiming she took aunt to appointments. There was no appointment. We can actually call the doctor for your information. The family rift? For some bizarre reason niece's family took her side. Of course they took her side. I'll bet in their minds, the niece earned it. Niece was doing the unpleasant, and sometimes emotionally/mentally draining work of visiting and entertaining a family member suffering from dementia. It saved them from having to set aside time to do it themselves. Everybody wins, right? Ugh. My parents disowned my oldest sister. She always struggled growing up more than us. She became a teen mom with a bad older dude, partied a lot, etc. But my parents helped her a lot. They do okay for themselves, but had a no co-signing rule for all 6 of my siblings, and they co-signed for her house so she could get a head start. She didn't pay the mortgage for almost 3 years before my mom got served in front of all the other nurses at her work. My parents worked tirelessly to try to work out deals where my sister and her family kept the house and got some leniency, but to no avail, because my sister never showed up for court dates. During this time, she paid $12,000 for IVF and got pregnant with her 5th kid. When my mom demanded some of the money back, she accused my dad and my brother of beating her sons when my parents took them to Disney World. He didn't, and said she'd file a police report if he asked for money again. They kept asking, 'cause it wasn't true. She awkwardly joined us for Christmas, and punched my brother in the face during the meal for humiliating her oldest son by asking him if he wanted to work at my brother's company for good pay. Her oldest son is in and out of jail, and my brother was trying to help him after his release, but her son said he didn't want a job and got mad. She then called the cops and told them the same brother had illegal guns in his truck, and they came on Christmas night and searched his truck. No guns found. Needless to say, she is not welcome anywhere near any of us, and my mom still cries about it, but refuses to talk to her again. My father said my mother's issue was she had too many children and it gave her some kind of brain fever, much like a dog that loses its mind after having too many puppies. My mother said my father felt trapped by me. He was planning to leave when it was just my 2 older brother, and then my mother got pregnant with me and he felt obligated to stay. Now that I'm an adult with 2 kids myself, I think I realize that both of my parents are just extremely mentally ill and incapable of loving anyone, including themselves. My sister was disavowed. She was a perfectly normal and happy person until she turned 16, and then out of nowhere she joined a gang of druggies and started breaking into houses and all kinds of crazy shit. Stole all of our stuff on multiple occasions. Punched grandma in head over $10, etc., etc., etc. The police had her drug tested a dozen times and she was always clean. Parents spent $10,000 on a stay in a psych place to try and find out if she had a mental disorder or had been SA'd or something, and there was no indication of any kind of underlying issues. One say she came home and said that she needed money for another abortion and my parents lost their shit. No one had known she was ever pregnant, let alone multiple times. They said that they would take the baby but she refused to go through with the pregnancy, so they cut her off then and there. And then it was like she literally never existed. I asked her why she was living her life this way the last time I saw her, and all she could say was because it isn't boring. Not a parent, but I've disowned one of my siblings, still have 5 other siblings. My sister is just a horrible person. She's the youngest of the 7, and she's been rotten since she was a teenager. She is much younger than the rest of us, so while the other 6 grew up together, she was almost like an only child. She treats everybody in her life like they're here to serve her needs. Some of the things she's put our mother through are truly horrible. I wouldn't give a shit if she disappeared forever. I am not sure if this counts. I didn't disown him, but I went through a dissociative episode after some really intense trauma, and I honestly couldn't feel any attachment and parental love that I had for my son. I tried not to show it, and behave as normally as possible because he was a child at the time and couldn't possibly understand what I was going through. It was pretty disturbing to not be able to feel any sense of bond with him. I eventually got better, but I definitely did not feel what I or most people would call love for him. My grandfather disowned his daughter-in-law and grandson after my uncle passed. The actual reason given was after my uncle passed, his widow reduced communication between the kid and my grandparents. A few months later, my grandmother passed. Total communication blackout. Nothing to acknowledge birthdays, Christmas, nothing. My grandfather would try to call every couple of weeks, on the same day and time he and my grandmother always called them. Never got an answer. Sent birthday and holiday cards to the kid, no response. After about 5 years of this, he cut them out of the will. He'd only got a tiny bit from my grandmother's will since she still had him in there. The woman was not a great person, so while I'm sad my grandparents lost contact with one of their grandchildren, I'm glad the last few years of his life my grandfather didn't have to deal with his son's widow. Not my kid, but my sister I raised for several years. I was a senior in HS when my parents had my sister, completely unexpected. They were 58 and 55. I never really got to know her much as I went away to college when she was 5 months old, and was in the Air Force by the time she was 1.5. I saw her twice on leave, and got pics, but the way life was working out we never really got time together. Fast forward, our dad dies when she is 2, and my stepmother is raising her. She was a terrible parent, like the kind that saw one of her kids run away at 16 to halfway across the country, another run away at 15 and get married, and one that is just a loon who spent his life bouncing around whatever hot MLM program was out there as a career. She also convinced my dad to send me to a Pray Away the Gay camp in Tennessee when I was 15. So when my sister was 11 and begging for help, I took leave and went to her. Surprisingly, my stepmonster was happy to get attorneys to draw up the paperwork for me to become my sister's guardian, and even pay for it. So I'm raising my sister and things are okay until she is about 14. Then I caught her doing these videos online talking dirty trying to get guys to get messy. So that was a mess of trying to get those down and suing the people that hired her to do them. Ran away for a week, hiding out at a friend's house, found her when she was caught shoplifting. AB&E charge at 14, trying to steal the phone of a boy she was dating to say if he was talking to other girls. It happened on base and I managed to talk it out of being a bigger thing. A second B&E charge with friends breaking into the NCO club to try to steal beer. I was told I had to leave base housing at that point. My security clearance was suspended to make sure she wasn't putting me in a position I could be compromised. At still 14, arrested with a stolen military ID trying to get into a bar. At 15 escapes rehab. At 15 escapes rehab again. At 16 things seem good and she is taking school seriously. At 18 she was accepted to Rhode Island School of Design, graduated with honors, and had an actual decent paying job with a web company with benefits and everything. Started getting stoned a lot, lost her job. Sold her car to pay bills. Lost her apartment, still hadn't bothered looking for work. Got her trust fund at 24, blew over $400,000 in 2 years, nothing to show for it. Had multiple cases against her for drugs. Was restricted to the state, but decided to go follow fish around anyway and sell Molly. Got picked up for hooking and possession out of state, was returned to where she was detained and somehow released pending trial yet again. While awaiting trial, she was caught holding enough packaged for sale heroin to qualify as a distribution charge. By then, I hadn't heard from her for almost 7 years, and only managed to keep up with her reading the police blotter or from the occasional attorney that she had contacted me to verify I would pick up her legal tab. I wouldn't. Against any logic, she was out of prison in under 3 years. I heard she dimed a bunch of people out to make it happen. She showed up at my house, asking for a place to stay. I said I couldn't have her in my house, but I'd get her a place for the night and then help her locate a place of her own. That night she broke into my house, nearly got shot by me while doing it, and tried to spin some story that she was looking for something she dropped in my house earlier that day, despite never actually entering my house. I told her she had to go. She threatened she would call DCFS and tell them I was mistreating my kids if I didn't go with her to an ATM and give her all the money I could withdraw. Told her to GTFO before I exercised the castle defense law and dropped her. Took out a restraining order the next day, and in doing so found she once again left state when she wasn't supposed to have and violated her parole, so back to the clink. Since then she's been dead to me. My dad disowned my half-sister, his biological daughter. She had a fling with a guy, had her third child, and he beat her up and ditched her. She had her kids taken away from her because of the unsafe environment her boyfriend put the family in, so she turned to drugs like heroin and meth. She also started shoplifting. She was arrested multiple times for drug use and shoplifting. She refused to go to court on the dates she was supposed to go. This kept happening for a year until she finally told my dad she wanted to get help. He paid for her to go to rehab. She doesn't go. She just keeps asking for money, and he keeps giving it to her thinking she really needed it. Nope, just drugs, so he stops giving her money. She goes missing for a few days. Turns out she OD'd and was wandering across Mississippi. She was arrested, let out, stayed in a halfway house, then went back on drugs and shoplifted again. She's currently in jail, and won't be able to get out that easily this time. My parents have tried for several years, but they just can't anymore. She's in her 30s, and you just can't force someone to get rehab. They want to have to change their life, and if she doesn't, there's no point. My mom got taken out of my grandparents' will, and she only got to know so because of her sister. Her side of the family has always been very conservative and rather communal, so till death do us apart is serious business with them. When she ran away for over a week without giving any notice, leaving me and my sister alone, only to come back with some stranger we couldn't tell anyone they were living with us, it was obvious things were about to get hairy. She divorced, and remarried in the span of about 6 months, trying to keep everyone in the family out of the loop. I wouldn't be surprised if someone learned about it through the invitation to the party. Cries and drama ensured that day. She wasn't invited to the Christmas family reunion, and she used me and my sister as bargaining chips. They took away from her anything that was still in their name. She moved away, and only recently has she been trying to connect back. I have disowned my oldest son. He SA'd my daughter, has been diagnosed as a sociopath, and we have restraining orders against him. It isn't fun, and I never thought I would be that parent. Dated a girl for a long time who had been SA'd by her brother for years growing up. Her parents tried the whole "we need to move on, forgive him, he's our son." It effed her shit up having to see him at holidays. She was cutting, drinking herself to sleep, almost destroyed a very beautiful and amazing person. It got better when he went to federal prison for making and distributing CP. TLDR, you absolutely made the right choice. Sorry you had to make it. Other way round. My father had this incredible stupid bee as a wife. She is just terrible. She left him, owed me quite a bit of money, cheated on my father, and on and on. After 3 years of marriage. She is around 36 and my father is 50. He did everything for her and she just made him miserable, but he kept going. When she left my father, he became really depressed, and I cared for him. Hoping that he would get over the whole situation, etc. We even fought the whole divorce together. He got better and everything. I was really happy for him. Then came the day that she had no money left and she came back to my father. He told me about it and I was so angry that he didn't learn from the story before. I told him that I don't want to see her ever again and I won't do anything with him if she there as well. The day came when my father and I wanted to meet for lunch. As I arrived, I saw her sitting there with him. I went to the place and said that she had to leave or I'm gonna leave. He became mad at for that and I left. He tried to do the same move again. I told him to fuck off and never spoke to him again. I never trusted this woman. It became better and then I found out about her cheating, lying and everything. She told me to F off when I wanted my money back. I won't trust her ever again, but I can't help my dad. I told him everything and he is still blind through those love curtains. Drugs, violence, theft, repetitively trying to destroy his younger brother, becoming a danger to myself and others, mental health issues that he refuses to deal with any longer or take his meds for anymore. Just plain off the chain behavior that was too much for all of us. I wouldn't call it disowning, as much as putting down boundaries and setting up fences to protect people who don't deserve his treatment. He also tends to be very manipulative and leans toward narcissistic behavior, in that he will habitually lie about you to others and try to play the victim. This can be very damaging to relationships with people that don't understand what's going on, so I'd rather just not bring myself into the equation anymore, because it's too costly and it's not worth it. He lacks empathy and doesn't know how to stop himself from his harmful behavior due to a developmental disability, although he will also admit that he knows what he's doing and he knows that he is manipulative and playing games at times. When he was younger and was under the rules of being a minor, then he had all the help in the world and it was easier to deal with. My son was in college and not doing the work. I was paying for school. He started withdrawing from classes in the last month of the term, then just hanging around with friends instead of going to class. He kept just enough credits to sign up for the next term, so I was unaware of his lack of progress until he needed to sign up for a 5th, then a 6th year to complete his degree. He eventually graduated but looked for work so slowly it took almost 2 years to land any job at all. I was at my wit's end what to do, and friends, family and even some professional counselors I consulted told me he was in need of tough love and I should kick him out, with the expectation that faced with cold reality he would suddenly get a lot more responsible. I demurred. While I was very unhappy with his attitude and progress in launching his life, I could also imagine a lot worse things could happen to him, such as drugs and criminality, if I withdrew the only stabilizing influence he seemed to have, living at home being supported by me. In the end, he hated his first job, worked hard to get a better one, and then a few years later a really good one. He's fully on his own, he's got an active circle of professional friends, he's financially responsible and may buy a house next year. I'm so glad I ignored all the well-meaning but harsh advice and just let him mature on his own timeline. Sometimes a harsh limit may work for some kids, but sometimes it isn't needed. Hard to know what's right in the heat of the moment. My grandma disowned my father because of the way he acted towards the family. He used to tell my mother that his father once chained him in the basement when he was a teenager and his sister secretly brought him food. He also told my mother that his father used to beat him. But around the time my parents separated, he suddenly started arguing it was all his mother's doing. However, his sister was a witness back then and saw everything that happened. Plus his father, my grandpa, was always very shady. Eventually my father disowned my grandma first, so his sister and my grandma disowned him as well. My grandma keeps saying until today that if he gets help with his psychological problems, changes and comes back on his own will, she would acknowledge him again and accept him back into the family with open arms. Just that my father will never do that because he keeps dwelling on the past that he made up with his own mind. It's pretty obvious because he also keeps twisting things concerning my mother where I obviously trust my mother way more than him. TLDR, my father disowned his mother, my grandma, so his sister and my grandma disowned him as well. A little different, I was disowned, but I deserved it. I was an addict and a mess for a long time. My mom couldn't keep bailing me out of trouble and watch me self-destruct anymore. I wasn't living at home. She came to see me one last time to tell me she was done, not to contact her, she would no longer have anything to do with me. She was in pieces. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. But it was the best thing she ever did for me. Once she cut me off, my rock bottom came hard and fast. After a little while of living on the streets and my addiction consuming me, I made my way to a detox center, got a few days clean under my belt and never looked back. That was almost 15 years ago. After I was clean a little while, I contacted my mom, and little by little we built a relationship again, and now we're really close. I am forever grateful to my mom for letting me fall and letting me back into her life.